Welcome to Tub Talks with Damon, on location in Seattle, Washington, with the great Michael Chancley in the tub at the HIV Biomedical Prevention Summit. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. It's still pretty early, but I'm still on East Coast time.
Oh, me too. Yeah, we're doing this early in the morning. Well, actually, if it was East Coast time, this would be afternoon.
Right,
But we're
yeah.
on West Coast time, so we're in the morning, and I don't know. I never can figure out that stuff. I don't know. But I'm so glad you're here, because there's so much exciting stuff going on, so much to talk about. And I loved our first interview. The link is right below if you didn't see our first interview. And where we talked a little more about your background as an activist, as the poster boy for PrEP in Louisiana. This time I want to just catch up with what's been going on and the changes you're seeing in the PrEP world. And before we get to all of that, I just want to ask, what do you like most about your body?
I still want to say something different than I said last time. I think I said my chest or arms or something last time, but as I'm like looking at my beard, that's one of the things that like when I go out, it gets attention. When guys flirt, they like to stroke it, and if there's a mutual interest, I don't mind, as long as consent is involved. Yeah. So
do people ever grab it or play with it without asking you first, or without?
It's happened, but it's typically people are either consensual or we've kind of like, sometimes like when you're on a dance floor, it's more like body language implicated, but I've never had a situation where somebody like made me feel violated when it came to like stroking my beard.
Do they ever like pull it?
No,
Okay.
no. Only
play with it.
Only the little babies, when I pick them up, they like to pull on it.
Oh, that is so cute. That is so cute. Okay, well, so Michael, we're here at the summit. We're here at the National NMAC Biomedical Summit. Opinions are varying about the conference, and but I think despite the tone of this conference, which is actually not so, for me anyway, not such a uplifting theme as it has been in the past. I feel like a lot of the things we're talking about are very forward-thinking and optimistic. Let's talk about what you're seeing happening for PrEP right now in this country and your role in continuing to expand access.
Right. So I guess I'll start with the downside, like and I kind of feel like even calling it a downside is an understatement. More of an injustice is we are seeing PrEP rates rise, but we're seeing a disparity amongst Black and brown people, and uptake in PrEP continue to grow. So when you see, every year amongst white gay men, the numbers are jumping drastically, and then amongst Black and brown people, you're seeing a 1%, 2% increase each year.
Yeah.
And now we're only at 14% of Black people who could benefit from PrEP are accessing it. That's one of the big things that's like really honing in on PrEP. I think when we talk about access to PrEP, we cannot not talk about the disparities that are impacting the Black community. PrEP has come too far along for us to we haven't even reached 20% yet of Black people who could benefit from PrEP being able to access it.
Yeah.
So I hate to start on a downer, but that is what's going on in the world of PrEP right now.
So that's the reality. That's what the numbers are telling us. That the disparities that have been there all along in terms of people using PrEP has the gap between white people at risk of HIV and Black people at risk of HIV, excuse me, in terms of PrEP usership, that gap is getting wider and wider.
Correct.
More and more white gay men are adapting this. Less, or Black men are not adapting this, or pretty much staying even, or rare, 1 or 2% increases here
Correct.
and there. Why is this, in your opinion?
I think, and I hate to like drive everything with like numbers, but we do know the majority of Black Americans do reside in the South, and I think that's why when people paint the South as like politically backwards and ultra conservative, you have to also realize like Black people make up a big part of the South. Of course, due to gerrymandering and things like that, we aren't politically represented in the ways that we should. But one of the big things is the South has not expanded Medicaid, and I think I talked about that last time, we can draw that direct correlation with lack of access just to healthcare in general when you have majority of a population residing in a region that makes accessing healthcare difficult. One of the things I said during a session at the conference, I think one of the things that really impacts Black people is medical mistrust, misinformation, but I feel like the problem is we use that as a scapegoat. Still, even with misinformation, you can give people correct information. With medical mistrust, you can build trust. And I know because I've done it with patients, I've done it with community members, I've done it with friends who they'll bring you a piece of misinformation or something they don't understand about PrEP, and you talk them through it, and then they're able to make an informed decision. So I think we can acknowledge that medical mistrust and misinformation and stigma exists, but we can't use that as an excuse to not get our community on PrEP.
How do you build trust with people who mistrust the medical profession?
I always like to share that, I wouldn't push anything that I'm not taking. I've been on PrEP. This month makes 9 years.
Yeah.
I was one of the first people in my community to get the COVID vaccine. At the International AIDS Conference, when people in the US were still struggling to access the Mpox vaccine, I got it in Canada at the International AIDS Conference. So I was an early adopter of PrEP and COVID vaccines and Mpox. So when I go in the community, I'm able to say, I'm not pushing something on people that I'm not willing to take to reduce my own risk and take control of my own health. So I always like to share that. I always like to take a sex positive approach within the realm of professionalism when I'm at work, when I did work in a clinic. So when I would start asking people questions about sexual history, and if somebody felt a little uneasy, I would make them laugh. I would be like, nothing to be ashamed of. If I could tell you stories about me that, pale in comparison to yours if this was after 5, but, I can't share it right now. And they would just burst out laughing. But that kind of shatters that, when I share my experiences, that shatters that stigma, that shatters that mistrust. It opens the door for me to correct misinformation and provide correct information so that they can make an informed decision.
This is what I wish people would learn about, because we have conferences where this question get asked. And I think what you're saying speaks to this answer so clearly.
Right.
You are a member of this community. You are trusted. You're respected. Even if somebody doesn't know you,
right,
they have an experience with you where they know you're being authentic.
Right.
And you sometimes use disclosure or I statements
right,
as ways of connection, of helping someone feel more at ease and reduce some of the shame and
right,
embarrassment. And you keep it on a very respectful level. That's what I think is beautiful about the consumer model.
Right.
Right. The patient model that so many doctors practice is, I am here, and we're talking a lot about a lot of doctors who are white men. I am here. How many partners have you had? How many drugs do you do? What sort of risk are you at? And won't you just, kind of take better care of yourself?
Right.
And here's a prescription. Good luck.
Right. I mean, I still, even as an advocate, still experience that when I have to see a new provider.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to, you don't want to throw on that advocate hat when you're acting a role as a consumer, but sometimes you have to stop and say, okay, wait.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I know this. You're not giving me new information. You're actually giving me. Sorry.
That's okay.
You're actually giving me misinformation.
Yes.
And honestly, I didn't always have that voice as an advocate or as a consumer, and even then, it can be intimidating sometimes. Still speaking up for yourself, but I know me speaking up for myself is key to me staying negative, because then I can access PrEP and access the screenings that I need to access and any STI treatments or prevention tools that I need to access. But also speaking up means I'm speaking up for my community. Mm-hmm. Because once I correct you on that misinformation, then I would hope that you're giving the proper information to the next person who comes into your office.
Yeah.
Or approach it with a non-stigmatizing way.
Right. At least make that effort.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways, there are tools, there are means by which we can change those discrepancies. We can alter that widening gap between black uptake and white uptake of PrEP in the U.S. You also have been fundamental in creating PrEP for Black America.
Correct.
Talk about that.
Yes. So PrEP in Black America is an initiative. It was several HIV prevention Black HIV prevention advocates. We knew the 10-year anniversary of PrEP being FDA, first drug for PrEP being FDA approved was coming up. And so we just wanted to figure out, like, what can we do? Do we want to do an op-ed? Do we want to do a social media campaign? Do we want to do a white paper? And we just kind of like, all those things have been done. But what we hadn't done is, and we just kept looking at these rates and these disparities, and we were just kind of like, an op-ed isn't going to fix this. We need to get beyond like the 8 or 9 of us and really bring more people to the table. So we didn't have funding for it. We just knew we need to get a convening to talk about like the policy barriers that impact PrEP uptake in the Black community, and we need to get Black HIV prevention advocates and community members all in the same room. And so we did that September 2022 at Thrive SS in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was a huge success. Like it was funny, it was supposed to start at 9:30, so at like 9:28, you're like, oh my God, is anybody gonna show up? And we had 80 Black HIV advocates show up, some coming from other places around the country. We were almost like stunned, like, wait, we wanted to facilitate this conversation and people want to participate in this conversation. So it was like by the end of the day, everybody was like, so when's the next one? And we're like, wait, we haven't finished processing the one that's like going on now. So now we did a second summit 9 months later in my hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana, which was an even bigger success. And then from there, we also hosted the pre-conference at the Biomedical Summit this weekend. So we had an even bigger turnout for that. We were even able to offer scholarships so that people can cover like travel and lodging expenses this time, something we weren't able to do the first 2 times. So now we're planning our next summit. We haven't announced the date yet, but it will be in Memphis, Tennessee this fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow, that's coming right up.
Right.
Okay. So if
So
someone...
follow PrEP in Black America on social media so you can be ready for the announcement to go out.
If someone who is watching this interview couldn't be here or can't be there, but wants to understand the main points or try to understand the takeaways you offer, what might you offer?
So we did release so out of the first summit, we released what we call For Us, By Us, a master plan for HIV prevention in the Black community. And we took all the conversations that took place at the first summit and really compiled it into a report that we can share with stakeholders, health departments, CBOs, community members, legislators, and saying, these are the things that we need. Or at least that was what got the conversation going, because obviously you can't cover everything that's needed in one single report. But it gave us like a basis to share the information that came out of the summit as well. So from there, we've continued the conversation. We've co-facilitated and led multiple webinars since then. We've partnered with other organizations to keep the advocacy going. So everything that we hear from community members, we're bringing into rooms when we're meeting with CDC and ONAP and all of these other major stakeholders. We're taking what community is saying and bringing it to them and saying, this is what we need to address disparities.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
and that information is online as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So so PrEP in Black America, we partner with multiple organizations, including PrEP for All, AVAC, Treatment Action Group, CHLP, Atlanta Black Women Leaders on PrEP, The Positive Initiative, and several other organizations. Because we are a coalition, we're not our own like nonprofit. We are our own entity, but we definitely use our partnerships as leverage to continue to make PrEP more accessible. So we do host that report on the currently on the PrEP for All website at prepforall.org/PrEP in Black America, and you can download the For Us By Us report.
And as a result of this coalition, you are hoping what?
I think it's centering Black voices. Again, I don't think you can divorce the conversation about PrEP access while not talking about institutionalized racism, without talking about white supremacy and transphobia and homophobia and misogyny and all of these intersectional issues that impact the Black community. So I think I think that's where PrEP in Black America really comes in. We can partner with a bunch of different other organizations, but this is one entity that is wholly Black led. So that centers PrEP access.
Right. And hopefully as a result, we will see more uptake.
Correct.
Among people who want it.
Correct.
In the Black community.
Correct.
Hopefully in the South.
Right.
Where about half of the new diagnoses are found.
Correct. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like I said, it just all happens so organically. And to see it grow so quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Organically, and I'd say it sort of makes sense because your compassion, your spirit, do you need a...
Yeah, the steam from now.
Yes. Your spirit, your kindness, your fun, your smartness is contagious. It's like, I think you bring this into the communities that you show up for.
Correct.
Which is how we met.
Yes.
Back almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
At the PrEP Summit. But, I've been aware of your work.
I want to say we met before I even started PrEP, because I started talking about PrEP in the community before I decided, or I had the revelation that, this is something I know you don't like should. This is something that I could benefit from.
Yes, you could. You could.
Yes.
As well as so many people could. Yeah.
Right.
So now you've expanded that beautiful, natural, wonderful energy into some other directions recently.
Correct.
You recently stepped down as the main administrator of the PrEP Facts group on Facebook.
Correct.
And gave it to Sheldon Campbell, who is welcome in this tub anytime.
Right.
And now
I'm still a moderator.
Still a moderator, so you're still active in that group.
Correct.
This is an international group that moderates conversations from all over the world, the questions, the fears, the misinformation that's out there about PrEP that you help people you help people get the right facts.
Correct.
And you've also taken on a leadership role with PrEP for All.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Yes, so should we talk about the PrEP Facts part or the PrEP for All part?
Let's talk about PrEP for All and what you are here, what PrEP for All is working toward.
Okay, so I am the Communications and Mobilization Manager with PrEP for All. I'm the Communications and Mobilization Manager with PrEP for All. Oddly enough, my background, I am a social worker, so I've done a lot of direct service work, but my dream has always been to go into communications. It was my original major. So it's kind of like a full circle moment, because now I'm the communication, even though my background is in social work, and I'm doing adult work in HIV, now I'll be able to follow my dreams and, do press releases and coordinate media events and do writing and things like that to kind of have that full circle moment, you're getting your cake and eating it too,
Yeah.
So
why have cake if you're not gonna eat it too?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and with PrEP for All, a lot of our work centers on the policy side. We have led the charge with advocacy towards a federally funded national PrEP program. We've had huge successes since the last time I talked about that on Prep Talk. I'm sorry, not Prep Talk. Tough Talks. Everything has the word prep in it, that's lit. No, but since last time, I did talk about our advocacy towards a national PrEP program. And since then, the White House, they actually released in their FY 2023 budget proposal, funding for a federally funded national PrEP program. That in the budget proposal, they called it the PrEP for All, the End the HIV Epidemic Program. So kind of easy to put two and two together.
So PrEP for All's name is in that.
Correct. Yeah, and so that just, and of course, we have a lot of things going on with politics right now. It hasn't passed, but because of our advocacy towards a national PrEP program and engaging stakeholders and legislators, it did lead to an increase in EHE funds for that year, ending the HIV epidemic funds. And also our advocacy as we kind of took this charge towards advocacy towards a national PrEP program. Last fall, the conservatives in Congress, specifically in the House, call for $767 million in HIV cuts. So we worked with PrEP for All, worked with PrEP in Black America, AVAC, and HIV MA to take the charge and lead the hashtag Save HIV funding campaign. And granted, I won't say we were the only advocates doing it, but that was a really big campaign. Like, we did a press conference in front of the state, in front of the Capitol in DC, which was at last USCHA, and we had letter writing campaigns and sign-on letters and engaged other organizations and media contacts, and actually got a lot of support from bipartisan support. We always talk about like these culture wars, but we got bipartisan support to not have those HIV funding cuts in the Senate, and ultimately it led to that crisis being averted.
And you were part of that.
Yes.
Front and center.
Right.
Making that difference.
Correct.
And that's the amazing part of activism that's sometimes behind the scenes, is these conversations and collaborations that improve our good or stave off disaster.
Right.
Like those budget cuts would have been.
Right.
And you were doing that.
Right. So that was like really exciting. And I know when pivoting from direct service, actually working with people face to face in the community or in the clinic, I kind of wondered, will I be able to be impactful, or will I be doing busy work moving into like the national realm? And knowing that you can do advocacy to get more funding towards HIV prevention and PrEP and avert crisis like budget cuts, knowing like, oh, that is impactful work.
Yeah.
That impacts the people who are in the communities, and the people who are doing the work directly in the communities and in the clinics and doing the direct service work. And I think that's a big part of why I enjoy the events that we do with PrEP in Black America. I'm sorry, I'm like pivoting back and forth because I wear two hats.
All this.
Right. I think one of the things that's like really impactful with PrEP in Black America is we bring these policy discussions to the community, and we bring these stakeholders to the community to talk to community members through our summits. So when you have case managers and outreach workers and program coordinators who are coming to the summit, it was like, oh, we didn't realize all this was going on behind the scenes. Now how can we get involved? How can we mobilize our community to make sure that, these programs are getting funded or that these cuts aren't happening?
Wow. Okay. So again, you were part of a movement that's prevented some major, substantial, catastrophic cuts to HIV services that would have impacted PrEP and services for people living with HIV, services that keep people alive.
Right.
That you helped to make sure that did not get taken away from us.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Thank
you for that. And then, so now PrEP for All is also working on a federal national plan. Can you say what that is?
Yes, so we are continuing to engage legislators, engage stakeholders such as CDC and ONAP, and the White House, to definitely, working with our champions in Congress, that, again, trying to get that bipartisan support. I don't think just like I said, with the medical mistrust and misinformation, you can't take no for an answer sometimes. Like, we have to elevate those champions and find new champions. And I don't think we can use the excuse, oh, Congress is just so divided right now. Even though we may not have always agreed on how to do it, you have your abstinence-only advocates, you have your condom advocates, you have your PrEP advocates, but regardless of what the approach is, HIV for a long time has been a bipartisan issue. We have to recognize that PEPFAR came under George Bush Jr. I won't get into like the politics of him, but that came under George Bush Jr. Even at ending the HIV epidemic initiative, that was under the Trump administration. So we have to acknowledge that in order to get anything done, we do have to build that bipartisan support, and it's not unheard of to build that support, bipartisan support, to make sure we're taking care of people who are impacted by HIV.
Right. And again, I think you're so positioned for this because you know how to communicate, which sounds simple, but I know a lot of people struggle with this. Just like you were saying earlier, you know how to communicate in the medical setting with a consumer, a potential consumer of PrEP. You know how to communicate with these senators and these Congress people. You know how to communicate on one-on-one and have a conversation. You do excellent job communicating in social media, online.
Right.
Well, and sometimes people are good at one of those and not the other, but I've seen you really, you can rock it in all of those.
Thank you. And I think the important thing is, I'm big on community, I'm big on collaboration. So I think one of the big important things is that no one singular voice, no Damon Jacobs, no Michael Chancley is going to get this done. So one of the initiatives that I just launched with PrEP for All is the PrEP, which is an expansion of our hashtag PrEP Saves campaign from last summer, where basically we want to highlight the stories of people who have who are on PrEP, or people who have tried to access PrEP and couldn't because of different barriers. And we want to allow people to share those stories. And so we launched the PrEP Saves PrEP Users Union. So in addition to elevating those stories, when people reach out to us from the media, we want to be able to put them in contact with not just advocates, but your average PrEP user who can talk to the benefits of being on PrEP and why we need a national PrEP program, and talk about the consequences and challenges of not being able to access PrEP. So just expanding, I don't want to just be the center of attention. I want to use my platform to help other people elevate their voices and put them in direct contact with stakeholders and legislators to talk about why this is important.
Wow. And when it comes to communication, and when it comes to,
and if you want to find out more about the PrEP Saves PrEP Users Union, go to prepforall.org/PrEP Saves, and you can watch some of our campaign videos as well.
Your ability, and we've talked about this, but your ability to use keyboard, social media,
yes,
in a way that's productive, effective, and educational. Tell me about more what your secrets are. Your secret sauce for maintaining consistency.
I always say, I definitely, I have my serious moments where I can talk about policy, I can talk about disparities, but I also believe sex sells, comedy sells. Like when sometimes I like to just share a meme about PrEP that may be a little raunchy and may make people's jaw drop, but laugh. And because then you can start that conversation. If anybody follows me on social media, I am very transparent. I do PrEP on demand, and I will post let me take 2 Truvada pills I'm on generic PrEP, so 2 Teva pills.
Yeah.
And say, hey, let me take 2 of them, 211, because I'm ready to have a fun weekend. And people are like, did you just post that? But then I get people in my inbox, wait, what's 211? How does that work? So, it's raunchy, it's funny, it's provocative, but it makes people know, oh, he's somebody I can talk to because he's talking about the wild weekend he's about to have.
So again, keeping it back on the eye.
Sorry, Mom.
I'm going to grab things to tell for you. Keeping it on that personal experience, making it fun, making it playful, and you don't ever seem to react back, when you're being challenged or confronted on Facebook or wherever. I don't ever see you reacting.
It hasn't always been like that. Okay. I think social media is still fairly new. We've had MySpace and Facebook, but I think we're more connected to people around the world than we've ever been in human history. And that's not always a good thing. Maybe you don't need to know the political views of someone you haven't seen since the 2nd grade, so maybe that's not as important, or with some stranger in, you know, if I'm in Georgia, I don't need to argue with some stranger in Omaha, you know? So, and that's not to say that we can't engage and learn from other people around the community and around the world, but we also have to realize, like, with the privilege of being able to do that comes responsibility, restraint, using critical thinking skills, knowing when to back away.
Responsibility, restraint, critical thinking skills, knowing when to back away.
Right.
And
I didn't always have all of those skills because, again, social media is new. So it's like you want to debate that friend from like third grade on, you know, their transphobic views. But then, like, sometimes you have to learn, like, is this conversation productive? Is this conversation healthy? Is anybody going to walk away from this conversation with a better understanding or growth? And in a perfect world, the answer would be yes, but we live in the real world and people have their convictions, and people, sometimes it's like when you're on the spot and you're having a public feud and people are chiming in the comments, like sometimes you're wrong, but you want to double and triple down because who wants to be wrong in front of everybody on the internet, you know?
Yeah. How have you handled that kind of situation?
Not well in the past. I've sent a few mean comments and messages to people in my younger days, my less mature days. But typically now, as I was talking about last night, one of the things I've learned, specifically during 2020, we had the primary election, then the presidential election, and we had COVID shutdowns, and we had the protests for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And I think we just consumed so many thoughts and so many opinions from so many people. And I realized you can't push back against everything. So what I usually, like, a technique that I've tried to implement is, before I react to this, walk away from it for 15 minutes. If you're still thinking about it 15 minutes later, then maybe you want to engage in that conversation, be it in a comment section, be it in someone's inbox. If it's somebody you know, say, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee and talk about this. But sometimes it's like, that person's opinion has no bearing on my life. Like, it's just a random thought that somebody probably threw out into the universe with no real thinking about it. I mean, we're all guilty of it. Sometimes we impulsively just say stuff off the top of our heads, and you put your phone away and you come back to like 100 notifications like, wait, I didn't realize what I said was so controversial, you know? So, like, it was just really on the whim. Yeah, so I'm learning, like, not to feed into that now. Like, and I noticed, like, my social media experience has been more peaceful. I notice my mental health is better because we have access to things we may not have never seen. I don't ever have to go to a city or a state or a country to engage people, but I also realize, like, you're only engaging them online. You don't understand the culture, you don't understand their background. You're just saying your experience is not like mine, so I'm ready to debate you about it.
Right.
Like, it's not always learning experience. Sometimes it's just impulsive bickering.
Right. And reacting. Doing the opposite of what you were just saying. To take a minute, take 15 minutes, breathe.
Right, because sometimes you'll walk away from it and like, oh, I totally forgot about that, or it wasn't even that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I was just reacting, you know, but if I'm just reacting, and things get bigger, and sometimes you might have a comment that just falls on deaf ears, and then when you respond to it, you're elevating misinformation, you know? So sometimes I think we have to learn, like, just let those comments die out in the universe. No, like, you don't have to argue with people.
Right. Not everyone has to have an opinion about everything. And I love the 15-minute rule or guideline, because I think, yes, for mental health, for physical health, does it, really matter? After 15 minutes, does it really matter?
Right.
Take that time. Take a walk. Breathe.
Right.
Get some air. Let your lungs have some breathing. Let your brain have some oxygen, and then decide.
Right. And I think we're just, again, the way we consume I just remember, being from a generation that was in school during Columbine and how it was on the news for like weeks and months, and we had in-depth conversations about it. And now you'll see like a news source, they'll post like, it's been a mass shooting. And then like the next news story, like 3 minutes later, is like Kim Kardashian seen walk. And it's like, wait, we just don't take time to like process things and sit with things and understand. It's just like we go from like the next thing to the next, like it's just like so rapid fire that we consume information and misinformation and opinions that I think sometimes we just like, we have to react to this and we have to react to that. And it's like, did you just take time to like sit with what has happened, what was said, what was done? The harm that could have caused, the benefits that like, have you really taken a full look at it, or are you just looking to have the next comment, the next reaction?
Right. Just reacting to that fight or flight impulse, that system, instead of being really mindful and intentional.
Right.
And, aware of what you're saying and the consequences of what you're saying. The consequences for you, for the consequences reading it. That I think would be a very different way, or I think that is what you have role modeled, and what I'm trying to do with social media is to follow that. Part of the joy of starting the PrEP Facts group in 2013 was like, okay, can I do this?
Right.
And, I can't say that I was always perfect at that, but I really tried to use these tools before responding. And then it's like, uh-oh, if I do take a few minutes, there's 10 other comments now I have to go through. When it's, there's that.
Right.
When there's a hot topic that's exploding right there, or a controversy or debate.
Right.
So it is tricky. But I think what I get from just knowing you and watching you is that there is a way to use communication.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say master communication, but I think it's always a process, right? But you use communication in a way to enhance and expand human life, pleasure, health, and policy and legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it.
Right.
You're doing it. And something else that you've been doing very recently on the side of being mindful, intentional, and really prioritizing your health and stability is you're a homeowner.
Yes, that too.
Homeowner. Everybody gets
I can talk about both experiences.
Michael's a homeowner.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So,
I haven't even moved into the home yet. Like I signed all the paperwork, got the security system installed, and then headed to Seattle for the biomedical summit. So
yes, can you talk a bit about this process of becoming a first-time homeowner?
Yes. It was a lot. It was overwhelming, but it was rewarding. It was emotional. It was a thrill ride. Like, am I describing homeownership or something else? But it's but no, it's been like a great, rewarding experience. I've had a lot of support from friends and family members, not financial support. I'm just talking about like advice and like, you can do it, and just understanding that I'm trying to build up my savings and pay down my credit card, so I can't always go to hang out. Like, I'm finally stepping into like real adult mode, being a big kid.
How did you decide that you wanted to own your own home?
And I think as we talk about, I don't know, COVID shifted a lot of things for me. It's like, I want to try to find the right words to say it that just like really capture it. But COVID was devastating. But there was something about coming out on the other side of that really made me think more long term. It's like, you survived a global pandemic that a lot of people didn't. What's next for you? So that's where I just kind of really rethought things about my career, the way I engage family. I'm living in Georgia. My family is in New Orleans. One of the things that happened during COVID is I started calling back home more often, and now I talk to everybody in my family at least once or twice a week, something I didn't do when I first moved away from home. Really started thinking about, and I think that's what led to me to national advocacy, really thinking about how can I be the most impactful in my career? What are the things that I want out of life that's going to bring me happiness? When the COVID shutdowns happened, one of the things I was doing was I was working on my applications towards doctoral programs. And then when COVID hit, I was like, I think getting a doctorate or any degree can be really rewarding, but also we're in a capitalistic society. And I think a lot of times it goes beyond like contributing to the body of knowledge or personal satisfaction of achieving those things. And it's always about, like, oftentimes it's about, how can I get this degree to advance my career so that I can work for other people. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I don't want to spend like my post-COVID years in a doctoral program. And I do want to go into one next year, but I feel like I'm a homeowner now. I'm in a happy place in my career. So now I want to approach it from, I want to advance social work and advance my advocacy, and not so much because I need this doctorate because I need to put it on my resume. And I think even becoming a homeowner, which is what we call like the big milestone of the American dream, it's like, oh, you can get that from a studio apartment to a nicer apartment to a not so nice apartment to hopping around to moving to a new city. And now it's like planning routes, buying a part of the American dream. It's like, if you can do that, a doctoral program is a piece of cake. Traveling and seeing more of the world is going to be a piece of cake. Building healthy relationships, like all of these things, like if you can do that, you can do so many other things if you put your mind to it.
Wow, I love that.
Yes.
What, if any, obstacles have you encountered on this path toward homeownership?
Not many. And the reason I say that is because I had an amazing realtor. I had a supportive mortgage officer. I told her last summer, I think I want to buy a house, but I don't want to make a decision so quick. And she told me everything that I needed to do to put myself in a good position and said, let's check back with each other after the holidays. And we did. And she made sure I was ready for that. And the same thing, like my realtor, I told him what I wanted and he didn't try to push anything on me. And he made sure I found the house that just screamed Michael, and he, and having the support of my family and friends who were just like, yeah, you can do it. Go for it. It made it not nearly as stressful as I thought it was going to be. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And I know we always talk about like, especially in the Black community, we definitely have this thing about like, we talked about this even in the context of HIV during the summit, that in our community, we like to keep things private. I think like millennials and even Gen Z are kind of shattering that. I'm seeing people be more open about like mental health and things like that, and HIV and sexual health. So we have this, but there is this idea of not letting everybody know all of your business, but I think being able to share with people, hey, this is something I'm thinking about doing. You don't always talk about finances with people, but that's how people were able to give me advice and said, this is what my homeownership journey was like. This is, and giving me advice and things like that and telling me what can be helpful. And that comes from, again, being a part of community, who I'm trusted. Like, I always talk about like the community trusting me, but that was me trusting my community to pour into me and know exactly what I want. It was funny, like even my realtor, we had such a good rapport that I was looking at houses and he was like, yeah, you can turn this basement into your dungeon. I'm like, okay, you know me really well.
Yes. Oh, what a cool realtor.
Yeah.
And is that going to happen? Are you going to have a dungeon in your new house?
The house that I picked doesn't have a really big basement. It's going to be my washroom for now. Okay. But what I lack in a dungeon, I make up for in a big, beautiful backyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. What would you say to somebody who's watching this and thinking, oh, I could never do that. I've been told my whole life that homeownership is for other people. It's not for people like me. I don't think I can do it. What would you say?
That's interesting because that's how I felt for a long time. Just with the changes in the economy and, just like the wealth gap just continuing to grow in this country. I just rolled out home ownership. I thought maybe one day me and my siblings would inherit, my parents' house, but that was like the closest I would ever come to home ownership. But again, I think talking to people in community, learning about those first-time home buyers programs. There are programs out there that I don't think people are always aware of that can help you get, you may not be able to walk right in and get approved for a mortgage, but you can walk in and say, like, get put on the right path. I think a part of it is really understanding your career goals, understanding what you're willing to sacrifice. I could have gotten like a really nice apartment in Midtown Atlanta, but I decided I will stay in my cheaper apartment in Decatur, Georgia, so that that few $100s a month that I'm saving, I can put into my savings account.
So you were like long term, you were planning, like, okay, if I pay less rent, I can save more.
Right, and it was just like minor sacrifices to continue to build up my savings. A few years ago, I didn't have a savings account. I didn't even check my credit score. I didn't even have a retirement account. Now I have a retirement account. Now I have a savings account, and I keep my debts paid low, even if it's, just like, sometimes you have to get those necessities like gas and groceries on your credit card, but just like developing a plan to keep those balances low. And you're going to hit hiccups in the road, and you're going to have impulses. When I talked to my mortgage officer, she was like, okay, between now and then, don't take any trips. I'm like, okay, so I'm already going to Folsom. That's already planned. I will pay that down like as soon as I get back,
and it's necessary for your work,
right? And I mean, for my well-being, I needed a vacation. I would have, I think, being able to like do those little, even with trying to save, doing those little things for like self-care is what kept me sane on that journey.
Wow. So there was a process.
It was one day when my realtor wanted to go looking at houses, and I was just like, I need a day for me, and he understood that because looking at houses is overwhelming. So it was like, no, I just need a personal care day. It's it's my birthday week. No, I don't want to go look at houses today. Yeah. Let's schedule another time to go. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. I'm so glad. I haven't had this conversation with anyone in any of the TED Talks, but I do think it's so valuable. And again, I come from it from both the financial and the mental health component of why home ownership is so beneficial.
Right.
And the first time I ever did it was when I was 30. And I also was so overwhelmed and daunted by the idea and thought there's no way I could afford anything. This was in California. But I had a very good friend who said, well, just, find out. Like, just learn, like, talk to somebody, ask some questions. And lo and behold, as long as I didn't think about it too much, I just took step by step by step by step. Kept thinking, okay, at some point this is going to be a no, but everything ended up being, oh, I do qualify for the first home for the loans. I do qualify for a mortgage. I can live in a decent place.
And and I think trusting your instinct, if you do feel like it's not for you or you're not ready, hit the brakes.
Yeah, things you could stop at almost any time.
I was in a position last summer where I could have potentially gotten a loan, but at that point I wouldn't have had money saved up for moving expenses. I would not have had enough knowledge that, and that's what was important to me when I talked to my mortgage officer. If you're going to try to push me through this process, let's just not do it. And she respected that. No, let's check in, 6, 7, 8 months from now, you think you might be ready, and really allowed me to process what becoming a homeowner would be. So, I think that's one of those things you feel sometimes when you don't hit milestones when society tells you, because you're supposed to be a homeowner by 25 or 30, and you're supposed to get your undergraduate degree by 21 and have your graduate by 23. And I think sometimes we listen to the society's milestones. You're supposed to be married by a certain age. Right. And so only if you're ready to take that leap, whether we're talking about home ownership, whether we're talking about a relationship, whether we're talking about academic and professional pursuits. There was a time when I did put more value in going out and spending time at the bar and clubs with friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if that's where you are in your life and that's where you place value and that's what keeps you sane, that's what your journey is supposed to be right now. It's not supposed to be where my journey is, or where your parents' journey is, or where your classmates and friends' journey is.
Yeah. This is again like my whole thing with that again for my summary. Like, there's no should here. Our path, we each have a path. There's no should about when you should get married, buy a home, do this, or even if to do any of these things.
Right.
But just to say these are options, these are possibilities. And I do think homeownership is one of the greatest ways to accumulate wealth in this country.
Right.
It's not a 100% guarantee, but it's pretty darn close when it comes to investments. And I'm so glad that you are putting those roots down now to see this.
And I know what equity in a home meant. So again, if I would have done this a year ago impulsively, I would not, like, I had to learn those things, like what escrow means and what...
It's a whole language.
Yeah, and so same way I had the direct service to HIV policy journey and learning things before I could become a different kind of advocate than I was before. It's that same journey. It was like, a year ago, Michael was not supposed to be a homeowner. Same way, 3 years ago, Michael was not supposed to be entering into a doctoral program.
Mm-hmm.
I left home at 33. I was supposed to leave home at 33. I wasn't supposed to leave at 21 just because that's when my friends left home.
Yes.
So
listening to your true self, respecting your journey.
Not to sound like a smarty pants, I tend to notice I make the best decisions for myself. The worst decisions I have made in my life have been doubting myself and listening to others. When I know something is right for me or something is wrong for me and I own that, things just always tend to work out. It's always when somebody tells me you should do this or you shouldn't do that things don't go, because that's not what I wanted for me at that time.
That's so important. I'm so glad you're here, and I really appreciate and value that wisdom. And I have very much the same idea that, like, at one point in my 20s, I was just like, Damon, the only thing you're doing wrong, the only thing you've ever done wrong is to doubt your true inner voice. That has never led you astray.
Even now, people are like, well, you have such great people skills. Why are you not continuing to build onto your direct service career? Because right now is the time that I'm supposed to be doing policy and communications and mobilization work.
Wow.
I'm not supposed to. Maybe someday I'll work towards being a private practice social worker, mental health counselor. That's not what's in the cards for me now. It may not ever be in the cards for me. Maybe I'm supposed to use my social work degree for organizing and mobilizing communities. That is an aspect of social work.
Yes.
Just because I have a social work degree doesn't mean I should be a counselor or a mental health professional. That's some people's journey. That may not be mine right now. Or I may decide a year from now, you know what? Policy isn't in for, or communications or mobilization work isn't for me now. Maybe I need to be back in the community, really helping people directly access the resources that they need. I don't know. I'll get to that point. I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
But you know that, like, that's okay. It may or may not happen, and it's all okay. Because you are still you. You still follow you. You understand, and, at the end of the day, you answer to you.
Right.
And you can live with those decisions. I'm saying this for me too, I statements. As long as I can live with the decisions I made and learn if I make a misstep.
Right.
But then I'm okay.
Right.
Whether I do something or not. That's why I started doing these silly bathtub interviews, because I just I just wanted to do them.
Right.
Why not? It was like, well, that inner voice has never steered me wrong creatively.
Right.
It's only when I've listened to other people's shoulds or limitations that I have looked back and said, oh, that was fucked up.
Right.
But when I just do my own thing like this, I'm like, yeah, it's good.
I always tell people told me I was too old because you're supposed to leave your hometown when you're young and foolish, not when you're in your 30s. But that's when it was meant for me. I had people who told me, when I think of 25 now, 25 is like barely adulthood, and people told me I was too old to go back to school. And now I'm considering doctoral programs, and people told me I was too old to even go back and complete my bachelor's degree. And I'm like, stop listening to people. I mean, granted, again, take advice from community, get that support, build off of lessons that other people learned, but do what's right for you.
Beautiful. On that note, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to share with the Bathtub audiences about your life, about your work, about your goals, your spirit?
Well, we will see each other again in a few weeks in New York for the PrEP for All No Pants Gala.
Yes.
Yes.
So people may be watching this after that, but let's just talk about that, because even after the event, there's still going to be PrEP for All activities.
Correct.
And in New York City.
Yes, so we're doing a fundraiser called the No Pants Gala.
Yes.
And you can learn more about that on our website. Go to the news section. We did like a press release for it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, basically want to get everybody together and have fun and see how creative you can get with no pants. So whether that be wearing your jockstrap or your kilt or your skirt or anything that's not pants but still fancy, and fancy is subjective, so whatever you consider fancy, just however you can best express yourself through your attire, and come and dance and drink and have fun and learn about our more advocacy towards a national PrEP program and making PrEP accessible to everyone.
Beautiful. So the link to that is going to be right below, as well as even if you watch this after the event, there's still a link to PrEP for All to keep up with PrEP for All and see what kind of other events or ways you can contribute to the national plan and the struggle that PrEP for All is engaging in to get PrEP accessible to everybody.
And whether you consider yourself an advocate or not, if you're a PrEP user, learn more about, consider joining our PrEP Saves PrEP Users Union and share your stories. Or if you don't want to share your stories, just learn more about advocacy towards a national PrEP program and all of it. I mean, I could probably do a whole talk just on the legislative and judicial, challenges towards PrEP access. Mm-hmm. So again, continue to follow PrEP for All.
So that will be on PrEP for All, though. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So follow PrEP for All on social media and follow PrEP in Black America to learn about the specific things that we're doing, advocacy around research and policy, to where we're not sitting here having this discussion about disparities in PrEP uptake or vaccine uptake if we ever get a vaccine, or doxy-PEP uptake. Like, we don't want to have to
COVID, monkeypox, etc., etc.
Yeah, we don't want to have to keep having these conversations
over and over.
Right. We want to make sure that as these new modalities, whether it be injectable PrEP or long-acting oral PrEP, and vaccines and all of these things, making sure that we're not repeating the same mistakes we made that led to gender and racial disparities with PrEP uptake when the first form of oral PrEP came about.
Okay. And people want to follow you and your work and your journey. What's the best way that you want people to do that?
So I'm on all social media sites. Well, not TikTok. My mind just can't figure it out. I'm not the cool kid anymore who, I was but definitely you can, Michael Chancley on LinkedIn, Facebook, also on Twitter, I am King Piscean 504.
Cool. So those links will be down below too. And if you like this interview, subscribe down below. There's almost 150, if you can believe it, almost 150 of these interviews now where we're talking about ways every single person is doing something to make change, to make this world of ours a slightly happier, healthier, and more pleasurable place to be in their own way. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, have these conversations with your friends, in your bathtubs, in your backyards, your dinner tables, wherever you talk with your friends about PrEP, about pleasure, about homeownership. And I love the lessons about the 15-minute rule with communication. I think that's a great conversation starter at parties and summer barbecues. It's like, hey, how are we all being intentional about this whole social media experiment we're in the middle of? And
right.
Is it working?
Right.
And if it's not working, how can we make this work for us? Because I do think the technology is a beautiful way to connect with people all over the world, but not if we're going to use it recklessly.
Correct.
Or fearfully, or aggressively.
Right. Or in an unhealthy way.
In unhealthy ways. All right, everybody. So Tough Talks with Damon. Follow Michael and have a wonderful day. Bye.